Hello, everybody, and welcome back to season 3, episode 4 of Mindclickers, where it's time to click both heads in 2021. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest who I'm very excited to chat to, and that is Benjamin. Benjamin is a part time performance coach and he's working with chess players on physical and mental preparation. He has a PhD in physics and 15 years of experience as a data scientist. Today, we're going to talk about his work with chess players, his approach to coaching, and more. So, nice to meet you, Benjamin.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be on the podcast on the show. It's fantastic. Really looking forward to the conversation.
No worries. I'm really looking forward to it as well. To be honest, I've played a little bit of chess in the past, but definitely nowhere near the amount that you've played. So I guess I'm really excited to jump in and learn everything about it, especially the mindset and mentality component of it, which is something that I've always been thinking about. So I guess what we'll do is we'll kick it off with a bit about yourself and your background, and I guess how you got into chess as well.
Sure. My background is as a scientist. I have a PhD in physics, and then I left physics to work as a data scientist in the
Mm,
finance world, and I've been doing this uh, yeah, almost 20 years now.
wow.
So and I've always been into sports and quantified self and so on. But uh, uh, working with numbers on a day-to-day basis, I really wanted to do something that was more about helping others.
Mm,
And that's why I got attracted to coaching.
yeah.
So the science, the sports science part, I mostly learned myself.
Hmm.
But like for the the whole mental aspect, I thought this was not something I felt that I could acquire on my own.
Yep.
So I did a 1 year part-time degree to just like learn some basic tools. I mean, by the way, I'm not a sports psychologist and don't pretend to be one, but I
Hmm.
wanted to know, get a few basic tools to help out people, and that's my journey.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess coming from a background in data science, have you been able to formulate many links between that? So, say for example, when you're working with a lot of numbers, and now obviously chess, I'd imagine there's a lot of numbers in there as well. So, can you find like different angles in that as well?
Yeah. So uh, I started out actually with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to be a very quantitative coach in terms of
Mm,
like, data and stuff. And
yeah.
actually, as soon as I started, I realized that I almost did like a 180-degree uh, uh, turn the other way
Yeah.
around. Um, as in like, uh, data is valuable,
Hmm.
but it's not. It's a guide, right? You
Yeah.
don't follow your GPS because it drives you into a lake. Um,
Yeah.
so it's definitely a case that but if I want to like recommend like an intervention, I would never do that without like uh, the assurance that data is backing it
Mm,
up, right? Like
for sure.
I wouldn't tell someone like, oh yeah, you should take like, for example, a vitamin D supplement if they are not like vitamin D deficient, right?
Mm.
Well, and first of all, maybe I'd let a medical professional do that recommendation in the first
Yeah.
place. But you see where I'm coming from, right? In terms of like the proper use of data. But data is a powerful thing to get feedback from, right?
Mm,
Like okay, if you keep like a simple log, doesn't have to be even digital or anything, but
yeah.
of the times you go to bed, you wake up, and your weight, it can be a very powerful tool to make you uh, act. And in the end, as coaches, we all want to like uh, induce behavior changes athletes. So I think that is a useful tool in as one of many tools.
For sure, definitely. And it kind of, brings me kind of flashbacks towards when I did data science at uni. And I guess, has there been many situations where the data is saying one thing, but your intuition and your kind of gut feeling saying something else?
Um, no, it's the problem is mostly like data where it's not quite clear what it's about, like
Mm,
heart rate variability, for example.
Gotcha.
And we can come back to this if we talk about recovery later. But
Yep.
it's a case of like, okay, now um, what does it mean on a daily basis? Like, okay, in the morning, then you can kind of use it as a baseline of like how you feel for the day and like
Yep.
what your load is. But what does it mean directly
Mm.
after exercise or after a game? In terms of is this like an adequate gauge of? So I guess there's a lot of like research to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's like, okay, you've got this data, but you're not quite sure what to do with it, and this can also be a lot of hype in terms of like that's the thing you have to look at, but it takes these things take time, like just like the first heart rate monitors to really get like a good grasp of like how to use that data. Can we still there's still a lot of progress to be done there.
For sure. Now, you mentioned briefly you did a little bit of sports science as well. So I guess did you work within the sports field much at all, or was it more so just within that previous kind of data field and then going into the mental coaching?
No, I didn't work with athletes directly.
Yep.
I have experience with just doing mostly endurance sports myself,
Mm. Oh wow.
like running, cycling, a bit of triathlon, and
Yep.
then a bit of resistance training. And what I like is I'm able to read the research directly,
Mm.
and I think that's very useful because often like the research is going to be digested by journalists, and then it's going to be into one of these very popular pop psychology book. And I have nothing against journalists, but sometimes being able to look at a study and see oh yeah, maybe actually these results is like a small sample, or it's not so relevant.
Yep.
I think this is this is very useful.
Mm.
But it's not about all about the research, because sometimes elite athletes often are ahead of the research.
Yeah.
One example is like bodybuilders. They've been ahead of the um, the strength and conditioning research
Mm.
for a bit, right?
Yep.
So it's about using the research, but knowing its limitation as well. And I think my background really helps me to that aspect.
For sure, definitely. I love that research approach because there are a lot of coaches nowadays, or even data scientists who don't always tend to go the research approach. And I think being able to have that kind of predominant research approach allows you to just have a little bit more credibility, right? Because that just helps with your case at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the end, it's like um, you need to uh, same to get buy-in from your athlete,
Mm,
having some solid scientific, and not just like, yeah, I've seen it somewhere on the internet that that's what you
yeah,
should do,
yeah.
but actually like point out to like just the abstract of an article, and often like people will be quite interested in that. um, Plus often there's like, I don't know if you know this there's this Twitter account, I think it's like say it's in mice, or and it's
Hmm.
about, there's like lots of studies, but they're just in mice, and then
Right.
people take it out of context, and it turns out that actually mice are different from humans, and
Yep.
you can make them like do a whole variety of things. You can cure obesity like 100 different ways in mice, but
Yep.
doesn't but journalists are quite keen to like take something that is in mice, and then like just bring it up for humans, and that's just not quite how it works.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because I remember back in undergrad when I was doing my sports sci, and yeah, I remember the teacher or the lecturer bringing up that some of the students in the previous year actually took articles that were predominantly focused around mice because they didn't actually read the article properly. So yeah, it's definitely very funny when people kind of make that mistake, and it's like, what are you doing? Now, obviously, I'd love to base this episode around chess. So, I guess, how did you get into chess, and what's your journey from the chess from the start?
Well, I think I've always been like a games player.
Yep.
I really grew up with video games, with the Nintendo, and then when I got 12, I got the Super Nintendo when it came out,
Hmm.
and then like moved on to PC gaming as a teenager.
Yep.
So um, then I kind of like during my university year was not into gaming so much, but really
Mm.
got into board gaming afterwards. Modern strategy board games. We call them like German style games, but obviously they don't all come
Yep.
from Germany anymore. Um, and um, and then met all chess almost by accident. I mean, I kind of knew how the pieces moved before, but never really played. And it's one of these games that just warm itself into your head, and it's
Mm-hmm.
quite difficult to get rid of. I mean, it's just such a deep and wonderful game.
Mm-hmm.
So I've loved playing as a club player. Definitely I'm just average strengths,
Yep.
nothing exceptional whatsoever. It's very difficult as an adult improver, but it's also extremely interesting um, to learn or to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how am I going to get better because of course, like, young people have higher plasticity. They will absorb new concepts
Mm.
way faster.
Yep.
uh, but it's still possible as an adult. The thing is, often life is in the way. It's like, okay, it's going to take many hours to improve from whatever level you are. And
Mm-hmm.
are you really do you really want to do this, knowing that you've got like a family and work commitments?
Yeah.
But it's definitely extremely interesting um, to 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 get on this journey of improvement.
Mm-hmm. For sure, definitely. And I think that's fantastic. I think that kind of backline story for your chess is has really kind of set you up to, really just be experienced within that kind of scene. And I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah. So that's it's kind of like almost you know things the pieces kind of moved together, like, and were fitting very nicely.
Mm.
I was There was a one of the elite players that I was quite a fan of, and I could see from interviews and reading here and there that he was a little bit struggling with his lifestyle and his sleep.
Yep.
So I kind of like put together like a small document, and got in touch.
Mm.
And I didn't get to like work with him directly, but um, that kind of set me on the path to like, maybe I should actually contact like other players.
Mm.
And then eventually I got really lucky that a member of the World Elite agreed to work with me.
Yep.
And we've been working for like more than a year now together. So
Fantastic.
it's been a great journey.
Yeah, for sure. I'd only imagine how much experience you got directly working with him. So that's fantastic. Um, I guess I've played chess very, very, very briefly, I guess, just on chess.com. But I guess the biggest question I have is what makes chess so, I guess, fundamentally hard? Like, obviously, there's different complexity levels, but I guess what makes it so hard what makes chess so hard? And I guess, can you fully master it, do you think?
Um, the thing is, like, if you think chess is hard, you have to realize that chess is hard at any level.
Right.
And if you look at even Magnus Carlsen was like really by some margin the best player,
Mm-hmm.
maybe to ever play the game.
Yep.
It's also hard for him, and he will miss things sometimes. Of
Yeah.
course, a lot less than other people, but still happens, right?
Mm.
So it's an interesting question why it is so hard. It's just um, yeah, it's just the complexity of it, the mental process you need to have, because I think it's there's a lot of like fixed things, as in there's a set of knowledge and rules that you need
Mm.
to absorb, but at the same times you need to be prepared to break them all the time, because it's a
Yep.
concrete game, and like the the rules are not worth anything if like they don't apply in a particular position. And so it's like, I think the combination of these two makes the game like extremely deep, because you
Mm.
need the knowledge and you need like the adaptability. And of course there's like pure visualization skills that
Mm.
need to be trained. But yeah, I think that's what makes it so difficult.
For sure. And do you think, now that I think about it, like comparing esports to chess, there's so many different crossovers, right? But the biggest crossover that I was just thinking about is this whole idea of intimidation, because you're sitting directly in front of your opponent. So do you think intimidation plays a factor as well?
Yeah, well, of course. Um, I think any factor of, like, all the psychological factors that you'd have in traditional sports and esports
Mm.
are really there, and even magnified in chess.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, definitely, um, body language
Yeah.
is huge. um, of course, there's you can find like lots of great photos of players with killer stares. I could send you a couple for the show notes.
Hmm.
And for example, Gary Kasparov, who's like also one of the greatest players ever, um, is retired now, but is famous for his like extreme confidence and body
Mm.
language,
Yep.
and definitely not one for um, the its poker face, as in like there's on rare instances when he's made like big mistakes. It's like you
Yep.
can clearly see it on his face. But yeah, it's super interesting that you get to sit directly in front of your opponent.
For sure, definitely. I think it definitely adds that extra bit of stress, I'd say, to the game, because you're, as you said, seeing someone's body language, and the poker face really comes into play, whether someone's feeling confident or not confident, motivated, or has that even underlying belief that they can easily win or not. It's all comes down to, I guess, how they see themselves and how they position themselves mentally. So I think that really makes it interesting as well. Now,
Definitely.
I guess one thing that I also wanted to quickly touch on was, I guess, the length of the games, because obviously you can have games that could be you could sit down and they could be over within a couple of minutes, but then you have games that could be over within a couple of hours. So I think,
Yeah.
how do players have that mindset that the game could, all this preparation could be, over in 5 minutes, or it could take hours. And, if a game goes for hours and they make one mistake, how crucial is that towards mindset?
Yeah. Okay. I think it's important so first of all, let's separate like the online and over the
Yeah.
board, or we call it,
Mm,
because online, of course, online really lends itself more to like fast action.
gotcha.
So like games that are like minutes,
Yep.
and then people also online like to play what's called bullet chess, which is
Right.
the fastest time control, where, for example, players will have just 1 minute for making all their moves, and
Yep.
no what's called in chess you have something called the increment, where you make a move and then it's like a little bit of extra time,
Yep.
and for example, you may or may not have that in bullet chess,
Mm,
so it's like extremely um, also fun to watch.
yep.
Uh, and this is where like people that are really good at this, they've also been signed by esports team on their roster. Somebody like Andrew Tang, who's like a strong grandmaster by all standards,
Hmm.
but definitely not in the world elite. But at bullet chess, is one of the best, right? And even
Yep.
on par with Magnus and Ikaru, and he's been signed by Cloud9, and Ikaru, of course, was one of the best players.
Mm,
Is part of TSM, so that's like the super fast realm. And then um, over the board, there's like mainly 3 time control. So you've got like Blitz, which is like about 5 minutes each. You've
hmm.
got Rapid, which is like about 30 minutes each.
Yep.
And then you've got Classical, which is like the longest time control. And it's like the king of categories, as in like,
Mm,
for the world championship, it's going to be like many games of classical chess.
right.
Uh, and this will be definitely, it kind of varies a little bit, because after a while in the game, after 40 moves, you get more time. So there's like
Yep.
this little element, but it can easily be 4, 6, 7 hours
Yeah.
So, and as you say, what's important is like, um, it doesn't matter if you make 60 good moves and one mistake, like that, the one mistake will destroy everything you've accrued over the 60 good
Yeah.
moves. So this is why chess is also so unforgiving. It's like, um, there's just it's just some mistakes you can try to recover, of course, but there are mistakes you just absolutely can't recover from,
Yeah.
and that's so brutal. But in terms of like, yeah, the the focus aspect, it's extremely interesting. It's like, how do you help someone to sustain concentration and focus
Mm,
over 6 hours?
exactly. Yeah, and I guess that kind of has correlation towards, maybe esports in a way where teams might play a best of seven, for say, for example, in League of Legends, where games could go for 45 minutes each. In between that, they get minimal breaks, so it's kind of like constant as well. And I guess that is a factor for inducing that mental fatigue or cognitive fatigue that we're kind of going on a tangent about. But it's very interesting. Yeah, it's just the fact that you could be spending 4 hours and then you slip up, you lose concentration, you lose focus for a split second, and there goes the game.
Yeah, and it's this if you play rapid play, so like say 15 minutes per player, and then
Mm,
like you can have like 5 6 games in an afternoon. So that kind of like looks like the esports format a little bit that you're mentioning.
mm,
Um, players usually say that there's a lot of extra fatigue involved in that, because you get to restart afresh every game. So
mm.
it's like you need to refocus, think about another opponent, another set of strategies,
Right.
and that can be like plus you have to absorb the emotional impact of having just lost or won before, and
Yep.
that's obviously extra mental fatigue to absorb. And yeah, we can talk about the similarities with esports later on, but I think
Yeah.
esports are huge and even way ahead of chess and what chess players are doing.
For sure. And I guess just touching on that speed, the speed kind of game mode, I guess the importance of, playing in that mode is kind of favoring speed and accuracy, right? Yeah. So, say, for example, when you're playing online, because obviously those your short games aren't really in person, but it's also important to, I guess, be precise as well and speedy.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely an element of you know mouse dexterity for this,
Mm,
um, and it's definitely super interesting to see chess evolve as any sport,
mm,
because right now this bullet format is not recognized by the International Federation.
right.
So the championships are, there's like an official world championship, but they're organized by platforms like,
Mm.
Lead Chess or chess.com or chess24. I'm going to mention all of them.
Yep.
Um, so it's kind of like, unofficial, but would it be like, I mean, clearly the evolution would be one day for the international federation to recognize one of these championship,
Mm.
because that's it's a fun format to watch, and that's the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really interesting because I remember watching Twitch a little while ago, and there's a lot more streamers who started to do play chess as well. So do you think that kind of had a really positive impact on the scene, or it had a negative impact?
Yeah, just before like chess players are like crying in despair. I'm not saying that bullet is going to replace classical chess, because classical chess will always be the king of format,
Mm.
but
Yep.
there is room for everything, I think,
Yeah.
and there is room for like the bullet as well. In terms of like yeah, Twitch has been huge. There was okay, the pandemic is obviously an horrendous event, and,
Mm.
and brought a lot of pain for many people, but it's brought a lot of growth to chess.
Mm.
There was a first boom in March 2020,
Right.
and then uh, there was another second boom with the Queen's Gambit release, the Netflix
Yeah.
show
The Netflix
in
show.
November, and I think it's almost like doubling um, of player overnight with the Queen's Gambit, something like
Yeah.
this. I mean, I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but this is what we're looking at. So
Yep.
there's been a few content creators they've been really good into producing content to appeal to the new players coming to the game. Both
Mm.
on Twitch and YouTube.
Yep.
Uh, like for example, a YouTuber like Levi Rosman managed to produce some great content at the right moment, and it's rightly so. It's been very successful. And on Twitch, the game also is taking off with uh, uh, many popular streamers. You know. Uh, both male and female, which is good to
Mm.
see, a little bit of balance. So
Yeah.
it's been a fantastic year for the growth of chess.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, because that has kind of established itself within Twitch, I can only see it just progressively growing bigger and bigger.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean that's going to be really exciting to see how that works, and all the different kind of small tournaments that come out of it for sure.
Yeah, and definitely, seeing like more people coming to actual chess clubs because they've seen a taste of the game, but it's great if we can translate this into more players, and maybe it's a great opportunity to make clubs more welcoming,
Hmm.
more attractive to new players, not intimidating. And it's definitely for my club, the Hammersmith Chess Club in London, we're definitely trying to be very welcoming and inclusive.
For sure, fantastic. I love that. Another thing that I wanted to touch on briefly was this. Now, I saw a YouTube video the other day, and it was really interesting. The fact that there was kind of a suggestion regarding calorie burning for chess players due
Yeah.
to the cognitive stress and element of it. Now, I don't know how true that is, but I wonder if what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it all started with an ESPN article about maybe 2 years ago,
Right. Okay.
um, and it's a scientist who he gave a number to a journalist, and he said like, yeah, don't really use that number. It's kind of like I'm not too sure. And of course, like that was like what's brought at the headline. And unfortunately, he used like some studies from the 70s was like completely outdated. So
Right.
um, this is kind of like maybe the hill I'm gonna die on is so the article mentions like that um, playing chess could burn up to 6,000 calories per day,
Yep.
and obviously that's like Tour de France mountain stage type of
Yep.
energy expenditure,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's definitely not absolutely not the case. There
Yep.
was also um, Polar did an experiment where the idea would be to have people fitted with heart rate monitors,
Hmm.
and that you could see. I don't know if you have such things in esports, maybe to like make the broadcast more interesting and displaying
Hmm.
some players' biological metrics.
Hmm.
But anyway, they use like this to derive some numbers of
Yep.
calorie burning. But the thing is, just because your heart rate is elevated doesn't mean that you're using a lot of energy, right?
Mm.
Um, and so when the watch has to be calibrated to to reflect that. So both this like 6,000 calories and this like this polar number of 560 calories per hour, they're
Hmm.
actually not accurate. Now the thing is that the brain actually um, it's not like the brain goes into a special mode once you start to think hard. It's like your brain actually is always using roughly the same amount of energy,
Yep.
and um, there have been actual studies where okay, we make people uh, uh, play chess or play
Hmm.
sports. There's like a recent German study which is about exactly about esports, answering this exact question,
Yep.
and by measuring the oxygen content,
Mm.
the
Yep.
breathing, this will tell you exactly what people are using energetically, right? Because
Mm.
okay, maybe your heart rate is elevated, but actually if your oxygen consumption is not high, then there is no energy expenditure
Yep.
in there. So definitely chess burns a little bit of calories, but it's like it's really quite moderate. So
Quite moderate.
um, yeah, this uh, I guess it's probably the same numbers that you would have in esport.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's it's really interesting because that's one of the things, as you mentioned it, that I really want to do eventually when I can, I guess, um, be with players in person, is start to track those underlying physiological values for players, whether that be heart rate, whether that be oxygen output, just really understanding where they start to stress. And how that kind of impacts their gameplay as well, because I think there's a lot of crossover variables that could be considered there. So it's always definitely a really interesting area of research that I'm, potentially keen on in the future. But yeah, it's always been one of those things where it's like, I think I saw an article ages ago that's like the average gamer burns X amount of calories by sitting at the computer in a tournament for a couple of hours, and it's just like, well, yeah, probably not. But where's the research to really back that up? And I think that's the problem nowadays, where someone says something and then it's like, okay, that's automatically the truth. But there's no kind of evidence to really back that up, which can be a bit of a problem sometimes.
Yeah, I think unfortunately this 6,000 calories number, it got like a life of its own, and because it was in an ESPN article, like
Yeah.
it is, and the shame of it is like the article that it's in is actually really good, like the rest of
Hmm.
the article, because it really mention or like chess players up now, they're more like athletes. They take like their sports and everything
Hmm.
quite seriously. So with that aspect, it's like a really super interesting article. It's just like that bit of information in there, which was maybe to bring up a little more clicks, or was a little bit attractive, and it just you just won't get rid of it now.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Um, Now, another kind of thing that I was really interested in as well is kind of this idea that it's very much prevalent in esports as well. Is this idea of anxiety and overcoming anxiety, whether that be in a tournament setting, whether that be even online if you're playing at home. But I think in-person anxiety would be a little bit more prevalent because you'd have those kind of factors that induce that a little bit more, like intimidation. How I chatted about that earlier. But I guess how do you help players to I guess overcome that anxiety and to kind of reduce it?
Yeah. Well, there was this super interesting saying by I think the sports psychologist Michael Gervais is like, okay, you've got two approaches. Um, it's either there is such a thing as a big game, and you
Hmm.
approach it like this, or
Yep.
there is no such thing as a big game, which
Right.
is kind of paradoxical, but um, is leaning towards the thing that there's no such thing as a big game, and
Mm.
I would also fall on this part. Um,
Yep.
and what do I mean is like it's really focusing on the present.
Hmm.
If you've got the discipline to treat every game with the respect it's due, and doing your best and so on.
Mm.
Um, the the final is just another one of these games, right?
Yep.
Um, so and how you do this is well, it's really about focusing on what you can control, and
Hmm.
be in the present, right?
Yep.
So um, to be in the present is something that it's not something you're gonna invent on the day of the final, right? It's something
Hmm.
that you cultivate all the time, and there's definitely exercises
Mm.
um, to do that. To also among the I've learned a lot of techniques to physiologically recenter yourself in
Mm.
your zone of like optimal performance, and
Yep.
and definitely if you're a little bit overexcited, through particular breathing you can calm yourself down, or
Mm.
if you're like a little bit bored, you can like hype yourself a little bit up, also through breathing. And these are
Yeah.
super powerful. I really love breathing because it's a physiological thing.
Mm.
So it's like you do it, well, things have to happen. You can't just not film countdown if you do your breathing properly. So that
Yeah.
makes it like, um, a really powerful tool. But definitely, that's where I drove, from meditation, because
Mm.
uh, it's about you know um, your self talk. We all have self talk,
Mm-hmm.
and for athletes, it can be it's quite an important part of
Yeah.
you know who you are and how you approach the game. And it's definitely what you don't want is like unwanted self talk, which would be
Mm.
negative, or something like
Yep.
this. And definitely, you know uh, meditation being like uh, the awareness of your thought, and the
Yep.
control of this awareness is definitely, a prime tool to use in your toolbox to bring this unwanted self-talk under control. So
Mm.
I'd say, like, to summarize a little bit of a convoluted answer, is like uh, there's like, being in the present, which is about uh, you know meditation is huge,
Mm-hmm.
and also all sorts of breathing exercises, which
Yeah.
whether your mind wants it or not, they're gonna reset you to be in the appropriate arousal situation, so to speak.
Mm, for sure, definitely. And I think that I love that because I think there's a lot of crossovers within traditional sport, esports, and even chess as well. So I think that there's a lot of crossovers that really entail this whole idea of being in the moment, being present. And I really like that. There's no big game. There's only the big game that you kind of, if there's no big game, and it's kind of brings about that kind of mindset that, the big game is just in your head, and you're kind of positioning that this game is the big game, building up the tolerance towards understanding, whether it be a big tournament or whether it be, the worlds, for example. It's all about understanding the previous preparation that's been put in place, and acknowledging that you can't really change anything right now. But it's always just about being in the present and just using those breathing techniques, and positive self talk. Definitely, I've had a lot of positive experience with using positive self talk with a lot of my previous players, and even guys in traditional sport, and it's always a good one, for sure. So I love that.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's definitely but in sports, it's about these are techniques that really you can use cross like many things.
Yeah,
and
for
uh
sure.
and and even like it's just like the implementation. For example, a basketball player, uh you can make that person feel the dimples on the ball just before a free throw, as a
Hmm.
way to, like, okay, just I am present, I can feel the ball, rather than
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, if I lose, I will. So it's about, okay, uh, um, someone else is not gonna have a ball to feel in their hand, but you just find the equivalent technique to make them, maybe go in their body, um, to feel the present moment.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And I love that kind of mindset. Now, I guess, in regards to your specific coaching, so what is your, I guess, specific coaching entail? Does that, account for, mental prep in game day stuff? Does that account for, even healthy lifestyle? What are the sorts of things you do with your player?
Yeah, so it's basically, um, we treat like the big objectives in the year the way an endurance athlete would prepare
Mm.
for big
Yep.
objectives. So it's like a year-long periodization program, in
Yep.
terms of, like, okay, this is blocks of increasing work with, like, some kind of, it's like a loose plan, because obviously, you adapt it uh, constantly, but there is a plan in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the physical side, because just to be like physically fit is huge. And
Mm-hmm.
than like the mental side. So it's about, because also all the mental techniques, they are not like something you learn like the day before the game, right? It's like
Mm.
you need to practice them all the time, because if you don't practice your breathing, or if you teach your athlete ways to deal with positive self-talk, like
Mm.
they need to use it when they're on the ladder on training games, because
Yeah.
otherwise they're not going to be used to it.
Yeah.
So it's about exercise periodization,
Mm.
lifestyle,
Yep.
and and about lifestyle, there's a lot of hats here, like the sleep, the nutrition, and the mental prep and the physical prep. And I don't pretend to have all the answers. I'm
Mm.
not like an expert in everything. I
Yeah.
know my limitations, and I'm always prepared to um, refer the athlete to someone else who's an expert. Or
Definitely.
also as a coach, sometimes you've got to say like, look, I don't know, right? Like a
Yeah.
coach doesn't have to have all the answers, but the thing is, you need to be able to say, I don't know, but I'm going to look into this for the next time, and then do your
Mm.
research and then come back with the answers.
For sure, definitely, and I think that's really important to not really step outside your scope of practice, because I think that a lot of coaches potentially do that, whether that be, say for example, strictly a psychologist, but then they're doing exercise prescription. It's like, well, that's kind of like the crossover, so it's kind of a bit different. But I definitely think that there are a lot of coaches that I've chatted to in the past. Even before Mind Clickers, back in my Call of Duty and StarCraft days, where it's kind of like they're trying to take on all the roles at once. But I definitely think if you do that, it's just not the most appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, this is why I really didn't feel comfortable to do uh, any kind of mental prep just off the back of like books and articles, and I felt like,
Mm,
okay, I
yeah,
need to do some kind of degree to really be taught by experts, because
yeah,
otherwise I'm really like out of my depth.
yeah, for sure. That's fantastic. Now, I guess how do you take someone to be a better player? Now, I know it's an interesting question because it's like, well, it depends on their skill level, of course. But I guess say for example, what do you look for in a player, and do you think, okay, I can help you improve this area, I can help you work on this. This is within our annual plan for this year, and let's like focus on this time. Where do you make those decisions, and how do you make them?
Well, that's interesting. It's like, um, should coaches have philosophies? Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, as a coach you need to have a philosophy, and
Mm,
um, I think as a coach you need to have guiding principles more
yep.
than philosophies. As in, like, okay, I'm, for example, my one of mine would be, uh, I'm evidence based, and I pay attention to data, and this is gonna guide all my a lot of my decisions. Um, but at the end of the day, um, the athletes kind of, he wants something from you, and then you have to bring that what he wants.
Mm,
Now, he might know uh, um, the 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 way to do this, but most likely he's coming to you because you will know better how to implement the method to bring the results that he wants,
yep.
right? So I just it's about, um, you know you need to really listen to your athletes and bring what he wants, and at the same time try to do what's best, in terms of, if you need to do a lifetime intervention that he had not thought
Mm,
of, then you need to, this is where you have to, have buy-in, and that's a huge thing. Now, to answer your question a bit more precisely, um, I think improvements about, um, especially chess, it's about working hard. So
mhm,
I don't deal with, like, uh, making the players better chess players. I help them to be better people,
mm,
fitter in their optimal, with all the tools on the physical and mental side.
Yep.
and then like they have to do their own chess work. um,
Gotcha.
I think to it's a huge thing, because how to improve at chess, there's so many people discussing this, and there's no like plan. I mean, you have like training plans, but it's not like once it's never one size fits all, and the only common thing is like you need to go beyond your comfort zone,
Mm.
right? So it's about, okay, um like say in a practice game, are you going to try to are you just going to play casually, or
Mm.
are you really going to be focused and try to improve? And then once you finish that game, do you go back to it and analyze it, or do you just click next and just
Yeah.
like uh, 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 go on? So there's definitely uh, um, uh, but in in any game, and definitely for example, when I play when I play StarCraft, I know you're a StarCraft player as well. I know full well I'm not. I'm playing casually, and I'm not gonna try to improve. And
Mm-hmm.
I just I just don't. It's not my goal to put in the effort.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, if you don't put the effort and your goal is to improve, then there's like a big discrepancy.
Yeah. Bit of a disconnection.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess you touched on it very briefly there, but just the fact of watching back replays. Now, obviously, within esports and pretty much even traditional sports, watching back replays is crucial, especially whether that be watching the back individually or with a team, just so you can really understand what went wrong and how we can look to fix that towards the future. So I guess is that the same for chess players, where they I guess go back and watch move by move what could have went differently, what could they have done differently, and is that kind of is it kind of like kind of not really soul crushing, but say for example you play for 6 hours, you made all the right moves, and then you make one wrong move, and it's like, why did I do that? And it's like you're watching that back, and is that kind of frustrating?
Yeah, and so there's two layers to this answer. Is one is like I'm gonna answer for amateurs, and the other is like for professionals, right?
Mm,
Um, so let's say on the amateur level, yeah, it's super soul crushing, but there is this thing called uh, um, so in tournament, it is customary to ask your opponent to go over the game after it. So there's a
right,
special room with like chess sets, and so you go to this room so that you can talk out loud and not bother the people that keep on playing. and
right,
and it's really really highly advised to do this, even if you just lost and it's painful, because your opponent, even if it's not really strong, um, and is your level, is gonna tell you what he thought, and maybe there's like his own version of things, and it's super interesting to see what he thought, and what he thought
yeah,
was his good move, what he thought was good or bad from you. And that's sometimes amateurs, like they're upset or they don't want to do this, but I would highly encourage them to do that. And on the internet, it's about, there's like this feature where only chess, for example, it's free and really easy to use. You can um, analyze your game straight after, and
mm-hmm,
there's a little button called like train your mistakes, and you get to see the critical moments in the game and actually
wow,
think, play what was the correct move to play. So
wow,
that's huge. And then again, doesn't take much time, but it's about like, if you just play to numb yourself and go game after game after game, you're gonna miss out on this. um, Now for professionals,
mm-hmm,
um, they analyze the game in such depth, when they will of course, like the analysis of games is like a huge a huge component.
mm-hmm,
And if you watch, like, they're often like the press conference, it feels like gibberish, because they're gonna talk about their games, and they're going to go like, they're gonna tell about some long variation that they missed, or like that they saw.
yep,
And so it can feel like a little bit alien when you listen to them, but
mm-hmm.
it's definitely like a huge aspect.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that. I like the fact that you can chat with someone after your game. And even if you lost, you can go through the where you went wrong. I think that's crucial. Being able to guess, go back and see what you did wrong, why you did that, what could have gone differently. And I think a lot of players, even in traditional sport or even in esports or whatever sport it be, um, neglect that, right? Because they kind of like, oh, I don't want to go back and look. Maybe I did this, but I think really when you get to that professional level and you're looking at it and you're going like, okay, then that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, and especially because now the computers are so strong, everyone has all the answers in their pocket. So they're like, I don't want to talk to my opponent. I can just bring my phone and see where I went wrong. But it's really deceptive because uh, it's like the computer will give you the illusion that you made like this one mistake, but actually they were like, maybe you lost the game
Mhm.
on one big tactical mistake, but maybe there was like lots of smaller mistakes that led you to this, and this is what you need to reflect on. It's like everything that led to that one play, and so this is where like uh, um, it's really hard because the any phone is such like at the god level of chess understanding that
Yeah.
the draw to just look at this and not talk to your opponent is big, but definitely needs to be resisted.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I guess there's a lot of things you can, I guess, draw from that, especially when you are, going through and playing a game, but then it's like, yeah, you made a mistake, okay. But I think, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, that kind of fatigue level, and I think I had a chat with you a little bit earlier regarding the psychobiological model, so of cognitive
Yeah.
fatigue. So yeah, I'd love for you to kind of explain that a little bit and your thoughts around that.
Yeah, because this is where if you've listened carefully, um, we've said that there is a big mental fatigue and it's important to be fit, but at the same
Hmm.
time, chess doesn't burn calories, so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, hold on, how do you reconcile all of this? And um, you have to realize that actually the mental fatigue comes from like the focus, and
Hmm.
there's this, it's a built up of chemicals in your brain. There's like a built up of adenosine, and
Yep.
and and this is like the same process that happens if you do physical sports. So there's this great recent trend of research,
Hmm.
exercise physiologists like Samuele Marcora,
Hmm.
who's like the big exponent of the psychobiological model,
Yep.
who came up with this like way to explain fatigue. And how does that work? Well, there's like two components to the model,
Hmm.
and one is your motivation, and the other is your perception of effort.
Right.
And then it's like about how hard are you going to push yourself when the fatigue comes in, right?
Hmm.
And if you've got more motivation, of course you're going to push yourself for longer.
Yep.
That's one of the two components. um, but now the second component is the perception of effort, and the perception of effort is actually something that rises through time. I mean, as
Hmm.
anyone who's been on a jog knows, like if they start jogging at a very comfortable pace, right? After an hour or whatnot, or faster,
Hmm.
like the perception of effort of this easy jog is gonna become harder and harder and harder,
Yep.
right? So this is like really the physiological component of the model. And so you've got this and so the training brings down the perception of effort, right? Somebody that
Right.
is fitter is gonna bring it down. And Samuele and his colleagues, they've really like done a lot of um, uh, experimentation, because okay, the
Mm.
perception of effort is something that really lives in your brain,
Yep.
right? And uh, if you make someone do a hard cognitive task, it's gonna like make it's gonna interfere with this with the physical tasks. So
Hmm.
they've done a lot of experiment. I'm trying to explain that as clearly as possible, that they really like a lot of data that shows that uh, really the fatigue that you get from the endurance is of the same nature that the fatigue you get from focusing, right? So this is why, like, I think by doing a lot of sport and pushing away the point at which you feel the fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
it's also pushing away the point at which you feel the fatigue when you focus.
Right.
So I think this is a critical. Now, this is all like work in progress, but when the more I think about this, that this is like kind of like, yeah, I really think they're onto something,
Yeah.
and this is why the fitness works so well for this, and maybe one day they will reverse, because they're also using cognitive fatigue for endurance athletes to make them like push themselves harder. So maybe one day the cyclists will be playing chess
Mm-hmm.
for 2 hours before their their training session to push their point of fatigue. So it's really a fascinating area, and there's lots of current research, and I'm really looking
Mm-hmm.
at this with a great interest.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I love the area of fatigue because it's prevalent in so many areas, right? Like not even just sports, but also just normal work life, where we kind of tide ourselves out in all different tasks, just because of that kind of focus, differentiation between actually focusing, but then also understanding that underlying motivation towards that work. So I think there's so much interesting area that's being explored there, and especially within chess and esports, the research is just going to get greater and greater, which is going to be a lot more beneficial for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Like what they're really researching is like more like what's happening in the brain, where how does this transfer is being
Yeah,
done. Is still like an open area of research, but I think the building blocks are really compelling for the whole model.
for sure, definitely. Now, before we start to turn off the gas and roll down the hill for the end, there's one thing I wanted to also chat with you about, which we kind of had a chat over Discord about, was this kind of idea of finite and infinite games.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
So this is something from James Cars, who was like
Mm,
he was like an academic. I think he was studying religions, and I
right.
think he unfortunately passed away last year. Um,
Mm,
and he wrote this book about finite and infinite games. And I think the game that you play as an esport player, or a chess player, that's the finite game. There's win and loss, but
mm-hmm.
you have to think, the athletes have to think themselves as more playing the infinite game. What's an infinite game? An infinite game is when you really um, have no problems to change the rule of the game to keep it going,
Right.
right? So of course there's no such thing as a truly infinite game in real life, but you see the idea is like, okay, um, as an esport player,
Mm-hmm.
um, you need to play the infinite game with your career, right?
Mm,
You want to be healthy to have a long career, and maybe if it's over, you want to be you know um, a streamer or a coach or something else, or even change careers.
yeah.
And this is the infinite game that you have to think of. And I think this is where us coaches are there to help them, play this infinite game, as in making them, healthy, well-rounded individual that will go. Um, and the interventions that we make, I think, have to go beyond the win
Mm,
or loss of the next playoff.
yeah, for sure. I think it's very difficult to introduce that idea, but I love the idea because I guess if you said that to a 14, 15 year old player who's just entering esports, it's kind of like, well, yeah, okay. But then if you kind of chat with more of an older esports player who's mid 20s, early 30s even, I think they would kind of understand that idea of holistically positioning yourself into a such place where you are able to sustain yourself in terms of longevity, right? Because at the end of the day, we have some esports players that are retiring at the age of 22, and I'm like, well, we shouldn't probably be retiring that early. And I think, being able to think about it in the long run is probably the most important characteristic to really take into account.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I wanted to. I know that the subject of like early retirement is important in esports. That's why I really
Yeah.
wanted to bring up that topics. And yeah, for young
Mm.
players, they might not uh, know or understand why they have to exercise and sleep well and everything, but it's
Yeah.
about you know um, just um, make them do it even if they don't realize that they're not so they're not I mean it's gonna they're not in touch with their own mortality yet.
Yep.
When you're young you just really feel that nothing can happen and it's up and up from there, but once you get a little bit older and maybe you have like health problems, you realize that it's just a nice and something like fragile and precious and beautiful, and you need to um, you know uh, be respectful of life, and just do things um,
Mm.
to that will be good for you going forward. And so maybe they won't understand, but as a coach, whichever way you can get buy-in and make them do something that is impactful, and maybe one day in 5 years, 10 years, they will understand, like, yeah, I understand now why we had to do XYZ, and why they were focused on
Mm.
sleep and so on. uh, then that's a win for the coach
For
and
sure.
the athlete.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Definitely, definitely. And I think that was such a, beautiful way to, I guess, kind of summarize our chat today and our episode.
fantastic.
I think it's really important to, look at sports kind of holistically within yourself, but then also within the future as well, because it's about, being competitive, being the best version of yourself, and kind of gradually over time sculpting that mold of who you want to be within the scene, because obviously we're not going to be able to maintain our performance for forever. There's going to be increases, there's going to be decreases, that's inevitable, right? So I guess being able to come to reason with that and acknowledge that helps you to develop that understanding that we can prepare for it. And I think being able to do that is going to make you a better chess player, esports player, traditional sports player, whatever it may be, just individual as a whole.
Definitely. Yeah. That's a
Fantastic.
beautiful conclusion.
I guess for everyone listening, if we wanted to reach out to you in regards to chess, or any questions, are you active on any social media, or not really?
Yeah, definitely. I just started a Twitter account recently.
Mm,
It's at Benji Porto. I guess the spelling is tricky, so
yep,
maybe we put it in the show notes.
I'll put it in the notes.
And there you can get in touch with me.
Fantastic, for sure. I'm sure that I know there's a couple of people who are really interested in this episode, so hopefully you get a couple of messages when this goes live.
Thank you so much, Lachlan. It was really a pleasure to be on the show,
Mm.
and a fantastic dialogue.
No worries. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for coming on. It was fantastic to really kind of understand different elements of chess that I actually hadn't thought about before, from long to short games, the psychobiological model of understanding fatigue, because it's so prevalent, and really just understanding chess, from someone like yourself as a whole.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.